A long time.
Everyone?
I'm good. I'll start the conversation.
I'd like to start our Finance and Audit meeting for March 7th and call it to order at 8:30 a.m. We have 5 members present. We are missing Larry and we're missing Terry. They both said they won't be here today. Everyone else is present. We have minutes for approval. Teresa, Kelly, any questions, concerns? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Public comments?
There's none signed up. Last call.
Anyone want to speak? No? Okay. Member comments? None? Okay. Routine consent agenda. Items that members would like removed.
I need to
Yes.
abstain from 6-2.
Okay.
6-8.
On a second. 6-8 is Carol. Teresa, you have anything?
Nope.
Brian, do you have anything?
Yes, I want to remove, just for opportunity for discuss 6-6, please.
6-6. All right, anything else? So I have 6-2, 6-6, and 6-8. Anything else? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to approve items 6-1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Kelly and Teresa. Go to vote. Teresa?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Motion carries. All right, we're on to item 6-2. I'll entertain a motion. Teresa?
Second.
Carolyn seconds that. You just want to abstain, there's nothing else on that?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, then we'll go to vote on item 6-2. Carolyn?
Yes.
Kelly?
Abstain.
Brian?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Okay, motion carries. We're on to item 6-6. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Brian, Teresa? Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to have the opportunity to give representatives of the Conservation District a quick chance to say something, and then I have a couple questions associated with that. So.
Come on down.
Good morning. Good morning.
You can pick any seat you want.
Any seat.
Whatever comfortable seat you want to
Let's
sit.
try out that new chair.
There you go. Try that one out.
It's awesome.
We don't have the soft, well, we have some old ones too that we've been using in our boardroom and probably need to do some replacement as well. So, good morning. And I did a presentation earlier in the week to Planning, Environment, and Development. And the materials you should have. A very excellent job to our staff and board, and Andy, as our Director of Administration and Finance, puts together an award-winning budget that we get every year that we've submitted it to the Government Finance Officers Association. So it's a great read. Our budget is in the process. We've approved it in February by our board, so it's here for your acceptance. And just as a reminder, it's one of those things that our budget's not considered adopted until it's accepted by the county board for the statute. The high-level notes of the revenue that we have for the combined budget, revenues at $28.8 million for all funds, and we do an aggregate. We have 3 levy funds, which is our general fund, our debt service, and then our tort that handles all our risk management. For expenditures, we are at $31.9 million for all funds, and $2.5 million or 8.5% increase over the prior year. We are doing some interfund transfers between what we had done and reappropriated from last year for vehicle delays, about $473,819 to fiscal year 2025 for an additional $750,000 from our general fund. And again, since that is our only operating fund that takes care of all the day-to-day operations, all of our Social Security, IMRF, pensions, all of that comes out of there, and all of the abilities to fund our capital has to come out of our general fund. So we do transfers into specific dedicated accounts that allow us to plan for those capital expenditures. At the end of the year, we see an estimated fund balance to be about $4.2 million drawdown of general reserves, leaving us at the end of next year approximately $2.3 million. Some projects that we are looking forward into the upcoming year. We have some great capital projects, both on a conservation level. We are working on restoring some areas down by the Kishwaukee River in the Coon Creek area, part of an open land trust agreement of restoration. We are also working with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, Open Lands, and the Friends of Hackmatack on the Rusty Patch Bumblebee up in Glacial Park. We are also Kishwaukee Mitigation Bank. We're beginning engineering for that, and we've had a very successful school springs up by Glacial Park, and we've been having conversations with McHenry County Division of Transportation to purchase credits from that bank. And so that's been another revenue source that we've established, and then looking again for another alternative revenue source. On the capital side, there are several projects that we always pursue grants for maintaining properties, such as the Prairie Trail, which is the longest linear park that we have within the Conservation District, goes from King County all the way north to Wisconsin, 20 years old. If you've been out on the trail, it's one of our most popular amenities that we offer. We've been doing as we can to maintain those areas with asphalt overlays to improve, looking at wayfinding signage for some grant opportunities, again, working with the McHenry County Division of Transportation and naturally McHenry County to provide those wayfinding opportunities. But as you drive or you have families that are out on the trail, and if you've experienced yourself, the areas that are not being maintained are quite severe, just like your roads and potholes with the thaw, freeze, and everything that goes on. They need resources to maintain those areas. So that's a part of our capital budget to be able to take care of that. As well as you'll see improvements in Cary with the Hollows Conservation Area. We received 2 grants, an OSLAD grant and then also a boat access development grant. So we are putting in an accessible trail around Lake Atwood. And then we are doing a accessible American with Disabilities Act boat launch. So individuals that can go out, whether they're doing canoeing, kayaking, paddleboarding, they're able to do a self-launch onto the water through that. So we're really excited to be able to offer that opportunity for accessibility for all. There's investments that are being made into our historic cultural properties. We have some painting that's going on Glacial Park with the Powers Walker, our North Branch in Richmond on the McConnell Farmstead, as well as the Kennedy home that is across from the Brookdale Conservation Area that needs a new roof and or a replacement to keep that up to where it's at. The grants, one of the things I wanted to highlight too is the district does do a lot of work with grant writing. We work with our foundation very collaboratively for philanthropic support. This year we have about $1.4 million of grant funding. That is significant. I know the county goes for grants as well, but that represents 10% of our budget that we're getting in grant funds. And then when we look at our general fund, the biggest outlay is for personnel. In our personnel costs this year, we did a compensation study last year with GovHR. We made adjustments to the salary structure, and so that is in place. Ensuring that we retain our staff is vitally important. That's how we are able to effectively manage and do all the great work that we do with a ratio that is uncomparable to all the other surrounding forest preserves and conservation districts, the amount of acreage that we own. So in your budget, you'll see a graph that has that showing of the land acreage staying pretty stable, and then as well as the staffing has not adjusted as well. And so that means we're doing more. With the, obviously we're 4 weeks early of spring this year with the weather changes. And so that is also just a point for the Conservation District. That's a shift in how we do business, meaning we are open. We opened our sites earlier. Staff that normally would have time to be doing research and planning for other activities, that means they had to drop what they were doing there and then shift everything into a more compressed cycle to get outside. The other piece is that means that there's more invasives, there's more people, there's more, which is all, the invasives are good. The people are good, the invasives are not so good, but we're having to mitigate all of that. So we are definitely tasked. The other takeaway I just want to leave is that the districts are debt service, and we are very close with our debt being 100% paid off. So in 2026, the district will be debt-free. What's remaining is the voter-approved general obligation bonds, and then we have, through our installment agreement, we had refinanced through debt certificates, and so that remains. And we are looking at conservation financing to put the district in a very positive light. That will mean that 60% of the taxpayers will see a reduction when that debt service is paid off of what they pay to the district. So I talked about at the Planning, Environment, and Development Committee meeting about the total cost that an individual property owner is paying to the conservation district. I just want to get the correct numbers here, sorry. So on a median home, and this is going based on a levy that was issued in and I can update Andy, you probably have updated numbers, but the number that I used with them is the 2022 levy that was our 2023 budget. And this is what's in the budget booklet to reference to on a 293,000 home, a median home value, $197 is paid to the conservation district. And of that $197, 57% or $113 goes to debt service. So the remainder to operate the district 365 days out of the year is $84 per household. So that's just a little bit over 43%. And that's 23, you break that down, that's 23 cents per day for a household to have all the conservation services that we provide, which is pretty amazing. So to ensure your clean water, to help reduce flooding, to ensure we have places to go out for healthy, active lifestyles, to recreate and be physically fit and a mental, balance that we all need in our lives. And you compare that to just purchasing a bottle of water, which is not sustainable in a plastic bottle, but water to drink, 23 cents a day for a whole household, to a cup of coffee, what you pay, or even your internet service providers. It's an amazing value that the Conservation District provides. So that's what's in our budget for this year.
First off, I want to say thank you very much. I think that the district does a remarkable job of two things. Number one, providing services and opportunity for our residents. I think you did a fantastic job of promoting the district and promoting the opportunities, and so I'm very, very grateful for that. But the second thing is I think you've done a yeoman's job with regards to the budget and the oversight, and so my commendation in that regard. I think that's evidenced by the ability to pay off the debt in 2026. I'm very excited to see that. And so I just have a few questions associated with some of these types of things. The first thing is, what is the planned kind of reduction in the levy then? I'm assuming that you will go for a reduction in levy based upon being able to pay off that debt.
So our levy, and in our budget, you'll see over the multiple years that the district has, under PTEL, we have not taken our full amount, right? And in the last several years, we've been able to do so. So that's only 3 times that we've taken it in 10 years. And what we have foregone in that, which would be $10.3 million over the time period, if you look back through 2011, and which we would have about $1.5 more million to work with today had we been taking our PTEL. So with the debt service being paid off in the near future, we are experiencing, just like other units of government and nonprofits and businesses, inflation, but we have an opportunity here. So we can assure that we are looking at conservation financing options. So we have debt service, and then we have our annual levy to operate. We know that we're very behind in operating and maintaining our sites and keeping up. And because we haven't taken the levy, we were doing what was right at the time. So we are looking at options there that we could ask the voters, and that is something that our board has been considering to be able to reduce the property taxes but reinvest into the conservation district. So you pay off the debt service, what you normally, that 60%, we can assure that because we're limited by statute of what we could ask for and what our rate cap would be, it would be no greater than 40% that we would be able to recapture. So you'd see a reduction of, am I saying that right, Andy? A reduction of at least 40% down to, from 60 to...
If we don't do anything, the debt service is paid off with the 25 levies, so going to 26, the total taxes to the district will go down to 60%. Some of the options we're looking at, the most we could take would reduce that from a 60% savings to a 40% overall decrease. Chances are it'll even be a bigger savings than that, no matter what the district does. But the worst case would be is still a 40% total property tax reduction to the district with levy year 26.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I understand that you have some decisions yet to be made in terms of how you appropriately manage the dollars and the fact that you're going to have to look at capital investment, et cetera. So I'm very cognizant of that, and I appreciate that. Can you tell me about how many acres you have that are being rented for production agriculture purposes?
Is it for farm leases?
Yes.
Farm leases,
It's about 5,100. 4,400 of that's in row crop, the corn and ag lease is producing most of the revenue for the district. There's another 700 or so acres that are grass and hay lands, things like that, there's not a lot of revenue there.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. I was also very pleased to hear about the fact that you have $1.4 million to anticipate in grants this year. I mean, I think that we all understand that grants are a significant part of revenue, so I'm very grateful for that, and I think that you all have done a good job of managing grants. It's not an easy task, frankly, to get the grant on one hand, but then to manage the grant on the second hand is a very important element of that. I think you have a fine professional staff which does a yeoman's job in that, so I'm grateful for that. Can you just tell me how you've accounted for your grants in terms of the presentation that you presented to us before? Where is that located?
Where can you find the grants? So in a couple of different places, there's grant money that may come into general fund, but a lot of them end up coming into our dedicated accounts or our natural resources revenue fund, depending upon the types of grants received. So if it's for a capital project like the Prairie Trail or the Lake Atwood, the hollows we talked about, dedicated accounts. If it's like a grant that we're getting with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or a grant from our foundation where they do the grant and then they turn that over to help us with our project or help us leverage, then that will come into that. With our foundation, there is some funding that comes into general operations as well to support their work.
Thank you very much. Two final questions. The first is, you indicated that there were interfund transfers. Can you just address that a little bit more for us?
Sure. Sure, you got it. You want to go right ahead? Thank you.
Yes, please. She talked about it too on Tuesday, but the only one that's in there for this year is a $750,000 transfer going out of the general fund to our capital asset management plan fund. So some of the big trail projects that Elizabeth talked about, that's how they'll get their funding now. Since fiscal year 17, the district had set aside about $3 million in the general fund, assigned it to the capital asset management plan needs. Those are kind of the longer term big picture needs. This will be the first time we've actually had to transfer money into that fund. So the camp fund that handled those capital projects had funds in it. They've exhausted now. So now going forward in the future, it's going to rely on that $3 million that we've set aside in the general fund. So that $750,000 is that first transfer for the 25 camp needs.
And a lot of, if I'm correct, the reappropriation and out of the general fund is the vehicle replacement. We had, supply and demand issues as a lot, and we worked again with the county and Division of Transportation to kind of go on their bid list to pick up the blockage that we were having in getting vehicle and procuring that. So we have vehicles from last year, and that's the reappropriation for 2024, and then again into this year. So we are behind on our repairs and replacement. Over the years, we've extended our repairs and replacements beyond useful life, just out of budget of what we've been able to work with our budget. But we are working to get back in a regular cycle that's appropriate to keep functioning.
Thank you. So are you anticipating that interfund transfer is going to continue kind of into the foreseeable future relative to capital investment?
Yep, absolutely.
And it has to, that's the only way that we can fund capital be outside grants. It has to come from our general fund, our property tax levy. We do not have motor fuel tax, sales tax, or any other abilities. It's property taxes.
Okay, thank you. Last question I have is, and I was trying to look and find where I had it in your report, but it seemed like I pulled up a figure of percent increases in personnel were 6%, something like that this year. And I'm assuming that a large portion of that increase had to do with the compensation study that you probably looked at. But the second thing is that I'm assuming that perhaps you had some positions that you're holding open or unfilled positions in the past. Is that the case, or was that not the case?
Not really part of that 6%. So you were spot on the first two. The budget includes a 4% economic adjustment across the board for non-bargaining positions. We have an FOP police group that's the contract expired on 3/31 of 23, so we're still working to get an agreement with them. And then the other It's actually, I think, a 6.8% total increase. 2% of that is related to the compensation study. So they found money, about 40% of the district's positions were well behind the market. So this is moving those folks to the average of the position. The other 0.8% are seasonal hourly wage, not just the wages, but total hours have been increased quite a bit to deal with some of the things where we're having a longer season and we just need people on the ground sooner and later in the fiscal year.
Any hesitation on behalf of your board regarding that compensation study and the increase associated?
Absolutely not. We had a working group that worked with the staff and HR as we went through the process. They did an amazing job and did their benchmarking with, the ability to pay and equivalents that they use, and that was a very solid factor analysis within the work that we do comparing to other open space agencies within our area, as well as some positions are similar to government sector that are not necessarily in conservation. So they were very supportive, understood that this is something that was way overdue and to be committed. And they, just like any organization, are experiencing maintaining your team and not having them leave for another position and the time of cost to get everybody up to speed. So they were very supportive in understanding that our people is how, and our volunteers, we also have to add in volunteers that are not compensated, but what the district is able to achieve, just approximately $300,000 a year of service for over 500 volunteers that work with our staff. But everything that's done on the land, taking care of invasives, taking care of trees that fall down, making sure guest services for a visitor economy is ready is through our staff. That's how we do it. And it's a small staff, relatively, I said ratio. We are way under our other neighboring entities that have as much or less land holdings than we do.
Thank you very much. That takes care of all my questions, but I again extend my gratitude and commendation to the board and to the professional staff. So thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Other members? Okay. I have one quick question. So and I know I brought this up probably a year or so ago, but how many acres are you looking at trying to develop for the remediation credits that you briefly touched on with our transportation department?
Well, there's School Springs, and I wish I can get that number. I don't have it off the top of my head, because if Ed was here, which he was, we just didn't have the entire staff. So they're doing wetland credits and then restoration credits. Right. And so we have to, with the Corps, we get permission based on our work of how much they release per year. So Andy, I don't know if you've got that in there total.
I don't have it on the top of my head.
But we still have credits for sale, and we just received some additional ability on the wetland credits to move forward with. And we've had some very successful sales. So that'll be up at the bank once we work through that, so that's why we're looking at another opportunity.
Well, and the reason why I saw them on transportation also, and I know that we're dealing with a 5-year transportation plan that has a lot of bridges in it, that's where mainly we're looking for the remediation credits because of bridge reconstruction and stuff. So, naturally, as a board member, I would rather reinvest in my own county than buying credits God knows where, So, I don't, do you know how many credits we're looking at needing? How many acres?
Just Scott? Was that Tiff?
Daryl,
there we go.
Sorry,
We need about 3 to 5 acres for Randall Road.
Okay.
And for each bridge, we estimate between 1 to 3 acres. And that's a mitigated amount. We may impact one, but have a ratio that's higher than 1 to 1.
Yeah, based on what
mitigation. So we average 1 to 3 acres is what we budget in our 5-year program for wetland impacts for every bridge project.
And so with that, we met and we're very interested in continuing to look at, are there other future opportunities? So obviously there's some variables that have to be evaluated to say what site could be turned in. I think we're open if we can find a large enough area, and that's why we're exploring the Kishwaukee as one, to get that in an engineering phase and then to start that process to be able to move to having that considered by the Corps to be a bank. But some properties don't meet the criteria to even our ability to focus on that, but we are looking at that.
Okay, yeah, it would be, to me, it would be beneficial for the county
Absolutely.
to be able to take the dollars that we have to reinvest and put it back into our own resources here, so.
I think even our discussion, we talked about if in fact current land holdings do not meet that criteria, but there's other areas that would be an opportunity that's maybe on our interest protection list. And again, if you see that flat, we haven't been growing a lot of acreage, but there may be a partnership to where assistance with funding for acquisition, and then therefore we can work to do the banking, and there's a lot of ways to explore that.
Yep. Okay.
It's a win-win-win for everybody, right?
It really is, and we're gonna have needs for a long time, so, you know, it's an opportunity, so. Okay. Anything else? Okay, then we will go to vote on item 6.6. Kelly?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And myself, yes, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We're on to item 6.8. I'll entertain a motion. Teresa and Kelly. Carolyn, you pulled this one?
I did, you know, partly because I don't know that, I don't think we're not gonna say yes, but I really would appreciate if when these things come through, there's more information about just the money that's going on here. There's really not that much in here. And,
She's
and
not.
I know, she's not here. So there's no dollars in the resolution itself, and if you drop down to the backup, it doesn't even get into, it talks about an hourly thing, the amount of, it would be annually. I don't know if this actually includes benefits. There's just no information in here, and I'm not comfortable with it right now.
Cheryl, are you able to speak to this at all? No? Okay.
Excuse me.
Do you feel more comfortable just tabling this until we can get, I mean, she's not here, so
You know, it seems kind of, I think this sounds really trivial, but it's very frustrating that it's not in the resolution. I mean, it's not a big deal, it's like we're not talking a lot of money, but every single resolution, most give us tons of information. The circuit clerk is not here, but hers are amazing. You know, I mean, just when you have that detail, it really just makes it helps, and then you're not asking questions and we're not prolonging these meetings, the information's right there. This is just, to me, if it's not that important to put it together, I don't know. And I'm not trying to be over.
Right, well, there's no information, right? Like Carrie also can't talk about whether this number is including benefits and stuff.
I mean,
I know Carrie's like, what?
No.
It's Cheryl and I were talking, it's a 6% increase in the position, which could be affected administratively with an increase in responsibility. But what is also happening is a change in grade. That needs to come to the county board, and that's really why it's here now. Cheryl's also reminding me, we are going through the class compensation study, and these communications and positions are likely to go even higher than the 5N that's suggested here. So it's probably going to happen, but that wouldn't be until July.
Well, and that's fine. If I'm assuming it will happen. I'm assuming, and I think Cheryl wanted to add something.
The change in pay grade wouldn't change benefits. It would increase a little bit of IMRF, but otherwise it wouldn't impact any other benefits.
No, I'm not suggesting they get different benefits. I'm saying, and I know it's going to be minimal at this amount, right? It sounds like I'm nitpicking, but it's more of an issue of how this was put together. And especially, and if it's going to come back, if it's 5N now and it's going to come back higher than that through in July, would it be better just to have this come through with the rest of them?
Well, and it didn't go through HR at all, Cheryl?
I do not recall this conversation.
So we can't even ask. So, but this would be part of the compensation study, so there's.
The communications, when we looked at the communication positions across the county, they were everywhere from a grade 4 to a grade 9. And I was like, all right, there's something wrong here. So we did put that one out for the comp study. We will be doing some adjustments with some of the communications specialists across the county, depending on how high of a level they function at.
Right, so does it make sense to wait for that, or at least table it for now and allow her to come back?
Right, I mean, it's interesting is that in this resolution, she says that she's stating she went through HR, and I realize you're saying you can't recall, you're surprised, we didn't. So, I mean, I'm fine with tabling it.
Well, I mean, I kind of feel like they're supposed to be here to answer these kind of questions, and I don't know. But I'm fine with tabling.
This point should be postponing.
I would just, yeah, I would just allow it to come back next month, and if it's a big, if it makes more sense, and there's some reason to do it next month, there's a compelling reason, and we revisit it next month, or if it's more important, important to put it as part of the larger study, do it that way.
That's my question. Is there a compelling reason that we need to do that at this meeting? That's the question. If there's a compelling reason that we need to do it, then I'm supportive of the effort. But at the same time, if there's not a compelling reason, then I would just assume it be postponed until a later time.
Well, I'll move to postpone to next month because we don't know if there's a compelling reason, so we
Well,
need
I'm
the
asking
person.
staff that question.
And they don't.
I can't answer that.
So I'll move to
It
postpone.
seems like there's, okay, the one option is to table it here. Second is to ask me to get her to get answers to your questions.
Okay.
It's fine. So motion the table to the
No,
next.
motion to postpone, please.
Well, yes,
It
motion to
did pass-
postpone.
It did pass PHCS, it was not
Okay.
hold there, so.
Motion to postpone until the next meeting, right? I'll second that.
Good. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, we are on to, is there anything for Advanced McHenry County this month? No? Okay. So then we're on to item 10, which is the travel and business expense.
Good morning, everyone.
Good
I'm
morning.
gonna present on this policy changes, and we have some
You can choose also any chair you want.
comfy chairs. I too. And Stephanie's gonna come up, my chief deputy as well. So we did have on the resolution a copy of the policy changes, like a summary. But today it's just for discussion purposes, so I wanted to hand out a copy of the policy changes. So this is the policy that we're proposing is the travel and business policy. It's what we provide to elected officials and department heads when they have business expenses or travel expenses, kind of guide on how their submissions should be for reimbursement, or even spending money on our P card and that nature. But this policy that we've had is a county board policy. It was passed back in 2016, and we've been operating under this policy since then. So it's really important that we get your approval, not today, but at the next month's meeting, and the county board approval, because it's what I work with department heads, what we look to and point to as giving us guidance when we review expenses in our office. And so I want to go through briefly the changes. And
Can I interrupt you for a second? So this was originally, just so everyone knows, this was originally on consent agenda. And when I was reading through it, you completely overhauled it. I mean, it wasn't just a couple minor changes. It was basically everything was touched. And I just didn't feel comfortable having it on consent as an approval, because this is a major overhaul, and I think it's definitely an improvement over what was there. But I wanted an opportunity for the board to fully look at it and understand all the ramifications and changes to it before, you know what I mean? So that was why I asked Pete, I'm like, can we wait a month? Because this is not just a simple couple tweaks, you know? So that was kind of how this got to be where it's at. And I don't think the full board has seen this at all. So one of my requests is gonna be at the end of this is send it out to the full board so that they can see it, they can understand it, because I would rather have them have the opportunity to ask questions or you know, analyze it and understand better before it comes through to them for a vote.
yeah, we're very supportive of that approach. We spent a lot of time on it. We were very excited to bring it forward and excited for the changes, and spent a lot of time talking to administration. And it's really, it's overhauled, but it's, and I'll go through kind of the changes. But it really has the same spirit of the past policy and the same, there was a lot of good things in the past policy, and a lot of other counties were using our travel and business policy as we were doing research. And so we didn't want to completely get rid of some of that spirit and familiarity, because a lot worked well. And so we were, addressing a number of things that we wanted to address, which I could go into, but just if anyone has questions kind of on our approach.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, because I do agree with the fact that this needed to be discussed. So thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss it rather than put it on the consent calendar. But I guess the pivotal question I have is, I do agree that it's quite a bit of effort to improve, if you will, and the language reflects that. My question is, has the administrative staff discussed this in detail among themselves, and have they reviewed it, and how comfortable are they with this set of changes?
So we initially, after really meeting with administration and finance, we presented it to some of the bigger departments and got feedback, and then presented it and sent it to all county departments 2 weeks ago and got a little bit of additional feedback. And we discussed it at the department head meeting in detail of all the changes. And mostly there's kind of two bigger changes, but a lot of what you see in the track changes is condensing redundant language and moving examples to an appendix. So it's really just professionalizing it into a quicker format to read. A lot of the other changes are fairly minor, other than per diem for travel meals and deducting commute out of mileage costs. Those are kind of the two changes that are, could discuss a little further, but
staff felt comfortable. Administrative staff felt comfortable with this.
I think a lot of department heads were really excited about it, and
that sounds like an auditor speaking, because excitement.
That's a fair point.
Kind of a strange way of putting it.
Addresses some issues that they had, but also, switching to a per diem for meals treats our staff like professionals when they travel, that we're not micromanaging, what did they eat? What time did they eat? Did you deduct the correct tip? Like, that's all on them, and I can explain a little bit more on that topic. So, but overall, there was good feedback, because on that topic, a lot of receipts are getting lost when they travel, or maybe it's all electronic, some receipts, and they don't get good copies or good detailed copies. So it really saves staff time overall, and not just for my office, but on them taping them and scanning those receipts and trying to make them readable, because a lot of those travel meal receipts are not. They kind of reflect, I think, nationwide, where a lot of companies are kind of moving towards as well. But there was a few other nuances on that topic, but I didn't want to get away from your question
No,
too
thank
much.
you. I think you. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I go through?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
If there's no other questions. So, we took a collaborative approach working with administration, getting their feedback, but it was, needed at this, we had the time to put towards updating this travel policy to dive in on some of the changes. So I mentioned per diem versus actual meal reimbursement. The per diem that we're proposing is the standard CONUS rate on the GSA website. So we're gonna set the amount for the year. So they would get, right now, the amount for this year is $59. And it's, if they do have a conference that's providing the meals, they do deduct breakfast and lunch. If the conference is providing it, there's rates for each meal out of that $59. And if it's a higher cost city, I mean, in some cases, it's not, they could end up spending more than $59 while they travel. But we do believe, and what we've seen in a lot of policies is, our intent is to reimburse some additional costs that they could have traveling, but they would be eating if they were home as well. So if you were traveling to Washington, D.C. for the county, you know, you could have some additional costs depending if you're going to fancy restaurants. But really, at the $59 rate, we're not increasing what the county is spending on meals, but really kind of doing a similar approach to what we have. And then we are saving staff time. They don't have to attach receipts. They get a set amount based on their travel dates of when they leave their house, and there's a schedule for that. So the other bigger change is normal. So right now, people travel, if they travel around the county even, if they leave their home and then go to a client location and then back home, they are getting from their home to the client location and back. As the proposed change, they would deduct what their normal commute would have been for the day if they came into the county building from that. Most businesses deduct out, most government entities deduct out your normal commute. It was, I think, changed in the past just to keep processing or simplicity, but it's not necessary for us to be reimbursing it. And what we have seen is departments are submitting for a mile that they're just going, even short distances, like 2 miles. So we have a lot of small mileage reimbursement requests when they would have, you know, in some cases it's less than they would have normally traveled just to work. Any questions on kind of those two big or concerns, or?
If you, I mean, I have questions, but I was gonna wait
Yeah,
for
let
you
me go. I'll go through the rest quickly. I just wanted to make sure I cover those. So the other ones is just talking about coupons, travel miles. We really I don't want to be reimbursing people back if they're using them on the county. We want to keep that separate. If someone gets a gift card for Menards and they buy stuff, I mean, they're basically making a donation if they choose to use that gift card, or a coupon. We're not going to pay them back for the value of their coupon. Just making sure that, because we've had some submissions. Yeah, so I mentioned moved examples to appendix. That way the policy is a little bit more condensed. And then we added language. The county is looking to move to a purchasing card that we will be eventually getting points back. And there's value to the county to make sure people are using their purchasing card for travel. Especially, we are seeing that if they don't use the P card and they use their personal card when we can be using the P card, if we decide to get a refund or the travel plans are canceled, the refunds are going back to their personal card. And then the department has to keep track. Did you get the refund? Did you submit it back? Or it's, you know, the fear is that it's forgotten in entirety. Especially, you know, for training. If a training is canceled, they don't go. So we want to encourage using the P card, county card. And then another change is for travel. In some cases, we are the prior policy was saying odometer readings are okay, but we want to require maps instead of odometer readings. We weren't getting too many, but we had concerns that some were being made up, the odometer readings, like who is really checking, and there's no way for us to verify that those are accurate, and so then we're sampling versus them including the maps of where they travel, like a Google map. And then mention P card for meals, and not use P card for meals and transportation because they're getting the per diem. And then transportation, there's just a lot of discrepancies on how much is being tipped, and they're tipping over 20% a lot. And so it's just easy to keep a clear distinction. We know those would come in as a personal expense and not use the county card when they're traveling. That way they're not, some departments will submit twice, submit on the P card and then also submit for reimbursement. And then we're always checking what came in on the county credit card. So that way it keeps it clean and simple. So we added quick, some icons for quick reference, just to add, try to add a little fun to the policy. Like you said, it's, you know, how, and then removed unnecessary redundant language, revised some language on the travel authorization forms, because there wasn't, some departments were submitting it to us in advance, like the old policy said, and some were submitting it with their submission. But really, we kind of put it on as something that's internal within the department, that before travel plans are booked, that they get approval from their department head, that it doesn't have to come to our office. We don't, it's not, we haven't been getting as much forms or really enforcing, like you have to get approval before you travel from our office. Most travel has good business case, and so it's just not, hasn't been overly needed, but we're not getting rid of those forms. They still could be utilized and encouraged by departments to make sure they have budget for it, and they could keep it internal. They could still submit it with their submission, but it's not like overly enforced. It's kind of changing the policy based on more current practices. So just clarification on flight changes, hotel late checkout fees, airline bags. It's just more clarification, not dramatic changes there. Phone charges, there's just some other ones. It was more just clarification versus overall changes, just to address, you know, common questions that we've gotten. And then added some additional, like hotel phone charges or premier parking or club fees and stuff like that. But I mean, if departments have some unique nuance or, you know, some extreme cases, if there is a unique exception, but there's a strong business case, the policy does allow for that, but it has to be, make sure it's documented as what that business case is. So, you know, we want overall to save money and, you know, respect people's medical, religious issues they may need when they travel and stuff. So, any questions?
You're looking at me for?
You said you had questions.
Well, I do, but go ahead.
Just wondered, it's been many years since this has been revised, so I was just wondering, have there been specific cases that kind of prompted this change, or is it just best practice?
It's good to review the policy periodically, and what we had was working in some ways, but there were a number of cases, and I think in the last couple of years I wanted to change it, but we've had some staffing changes, and it wasn't, administration could have presented some changes as well. It's the county board policy. but we were really motivated because we see it frequently. We work with the policy frequently to kind of assist the county in presenting some policy changes because we probably have one of the most experience working with it, and then working with departments countywide. There are, like the sheriff has a short travel policy that they are currently on a per diem, and they have a couple unique changes to theirs, but we enforce their policy with our policy. So if their policy doesn't mention anything, then we default to our policy. But it's pretty much just they're on a per diem, so. But we sent this out in advance to them as well in case they wanted to change their general orders. But it's really just having the time to dedicate to really, as we talked with Peter, do a really professional job updating it to take us for the next several years. Yeah.
You wanted to save your office some time.
Yeah, save my office time in processing questions, and then, you know, the county departments as well. You know, it's easier to reference because, you know, some people, we provide the policy, they don't take the time to read it, so it's shorter, condensed, quicker, easier.
There were some standard, or there were some areas that were really vague, and so we had common questions on how do we handle this, how do we handle that, and so by putting it in the policy, it just makes it a lot easier if we can just send them to the policy, or they read it first and don't ask us.
Thank you.
Not that we won't answer questions, we will, but.
It's very difficult to do a one-size-fits-all policy. And I don't agree with everything. To me, it's an improvement. And if it adds efficiency in the auditor's office, we will abide by it. I mean, there's challenges. If we're going to mandate using the county P card, we're not mandating it, we're encouraging it, right? You are foregoing sometimes if you use your American airline Visa and getting free baggage checked and some of those things. So we might need to talk through that a little bit more. Private thing, private Uber cash, used on a county expense. That's not reimbursable. I don't agree with that. I can move by that. Those sorts of little nuances, but it's a step in the right direction. And if we can make some final adjustments, even if we don't, we'll live by it. I want it to be a better policy for them.
Well, so that was, I've never used this before. I've never asked the county for reimbursement on anything, but I put myself in a position, well, how, if, I'm traveling, let's just say for the county, how would this impact me and my ability to travel? So that's the lens that I kind of use to try and look at this, right? And I think it would be challenging because even to fly somewhere, so let's just say I were to fly to Washington, D.C., it's a situation where I would fly American because I have status on American. American may not be the cheapest airline to get to Washington, D.C., but I also don't have additional costs. So I can fly on basic economy, the cheapest that they got, and sit anywhere I want in the plane, right? So, and I get all my bags for free and all the, So how would I guess if I was using this, how would I interpret that? Because the policy says you pay for one bag and basic economy. So that's, basic economy would be the same because I would still have the basic economy fare, but I don't have to pay for a bag at that point. So if American Airlines was, let's say, $40 more expensive than, whatever, let's say United on their basic economy, which was the actual cheapest, is that a net wash and does that get considered or does it not get considered?
If that situation was presented, they would need to document that they chose American over this other airline that they noticed was cheaper because they were saving on bags. I mean, overall, we want to, if it was cheaper.
You've allowed, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've got a policy, but you've allowed for a business case to be presented.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's.
That's where I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
but most, hasn't been a common situation that we've seen, because a lot of times they pick the flight, as long as it doesn't seem like they pick a flight and they work with the department head to pick a flight based on time, and they don't, as long as it's not outrageous, the flight cost, we don't exactly know. We didn't say, hey, present an analysis on pros and cons. You wouldn't, in that case, if you didn't have to pay for bag fees, you wouldn't get reimbursed for a cost that you didn't expend.
Correct,
but if
correct.
you chose to fly on American and they had a flight in it, we may not see in that case analysis. But if you wanted to present, hey, I did select airline, you documented your business case.
Well, and so that, I guess that kind of goes to my second question, which is, I'm assuming, like, if you have a 10 o'clock meeting in Washington DC, let's say, and your choice is to fly out the day before, pay for a hotel so you're there for the 10 o'clock meeting, or fly out at 7 o'clock in the morning, so you're there because you lose an hour going to DC. So
You need to go earlier.
Well, whatever. So, but my scenario is, so maybe that flight in the morning is a little more expensive than perhaps a later flight, but you have meetings set up, and that's ultimately cheaper than getting a hotel room for the night and flying in the night before. I guess that's, as long as there's the flexibility and the autonomy for the employee or the department head to kind of be like, hey, overall, this is going to be cheaper for the county to do it this way, even though it may not appear on the surface that way, meaning with the data that they're giving you, that's fine. I mean,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've just been working on, and this is on a smaller scale, but for mileage reimbursement, putting together like a sample of, these are some different scenarios that could come up and how you would handle them. So like somebody might go a longer route because they don't have an I-Pass and they don't have a way of paying the tolls. And so, if they put a note on there, we have no problem approving that, the higher mileage. Or if they go to Springfield, it's 14 more miles, but you save 20 minutes. So if they just put a note, I wanted the quicker route, go for it. We'll pay the 14 extra miles. So we're not going just by what's in here. I mean, it does say that auditor judgment will be used. And so if there's a business case for something, then.
It's not faster to go down, down to Joliet and go down 55, or Rockford and go down 39. It's a little longer, but it's faster.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
we'll take
Trust
the
me.
highway, or they could choose to not
It's
take
less
the
tolls
highway.
too.
Right.
We've had some of these discussions.
And then-
Another little nut, like you jump out of an Uber and it says, you want to tip 5, 7, or 9. You pick 7. 7's 22%. That's over. But all right, we'll deal with that. I mean, those things present themselves, but we can deal with that.
Yeah.
But the rigid rules are what they are.
And to kind of talk about your example, departments, depending on when it starts, can choose, to fly out the day before and get there, because a lot of times it starts at 8 or 10. It's very difficult to travel that morning. It's really up to them. It's just, they can't be there like days in advance. If they do choose to do that, they just have to pay for the additional hotel costs if they're incorporating a personal trip or some additional vacation time with their travel. They just have to show that the flight didn't, the way earlier flight didn't cause additional costs to the county. So it's really, there is some wiggle room. If there's a snowstorm, we've had every situation you could think of. And you don't write a policy for every situation either.
No, right.
You just put the high level stuff, and then, you know, we just document.
You've asked employees to work with their managers on the unforeseen, you know, if there is bad weather and your flight gets canceled, or you're encouraged to change your flight, we'd like staff to work with their managers before, you know, making those decisions.
Well, and some of what seems maybe as rigid in here is because of examples we have seen, where maybe it was a gray area or it wasn't addressed specifically in the prior policy, and it seems like it was getting taken advantage of. And so if we have in the policy a more rigid set of rules, then it does help us to cut back on or crack down on some of the abuse of the policy. But if there's a business case, we're still going to use common sense and take that into account.
So I'm just curious, because I really don't know. I mean, how often do we have staff that travels for what, how often do we have staff that uses this policy?
Let's say the sheriff's the most.
Yeah, they travel a
But
lot.
that's maybe the easiest, because it's pretty straightforward.
Right.
Yeah, the
There's
rest
probably
is,
There's a
three
lot of,
main
you know,
departments.
extradition and training and things like that. They're moving around.
but there's like business expense. I mean, this policy's used if there's a retirement or, you know, it talks about sales tax. There's a lot of different nuances. It's utilized.
No, I know, I just didn't know, I
expenses are
don't
submitted on a
know how
daily-
much our staff travels. I mean, I don't.
Not, I mean,
We do
well,
have a couple
2020
departments that
Yeah,
travel more.
for training or down to Springfield for, you know, association meetings is more frequent, but it's not a ton of out-of-state travel. Some is, you know, the grant training, CDBG, health, on occasion are sending some people, but a lot of it can be picked up in Illinois, like training. We do send people like to Washington, DC for NACO. Think of other, and yeah, the sheriff.
Annual professional conferences in the summertime.
Yeah.
Infrequent for managers.
That's your question.
Go ahead.
All right, so I thought you said earlier that the sheriff's department has their own, okay. So how many, so if they're one of the ones that does the most travel, how, and I think you said this kind of aligns with what they do, but theirs fits more the structure of their day better. Are there any other travel policies in the county that, in addition to this?
That I can recall is BAC was switched to a per diem. That was Veterans Assistance Commission. They just a year or two ago, right around that time frame, submitted it's a shorter policy, like both departments. It's a fraction, you know, just mostly clear they wanted to do per diem, and I think the VAC being a separate operating, or they have their own board and submitted that to us. But I think that's the only, there might be something with the judges. There's one page.
That's statewide. It's a state policy.
Yeah, that it very limited ever comes into play. It's mostly the sheriff, and I think the main difference was they had a per diem with set rates. But they have like centralized training forms, like they have someone that books their training and airfare and does the logistics for the officers. So they have forms and they're very strict on documentation, and it's a very centralized process over there.
And I know you addressed the per diem, and I think you said $59 per day or something like that?
Yeah, is what the standard CONUS rate is. I presented, like, do we do just what the cost per city is, but then each department has to look up and spend time submitting what that cost is per that city. But it could cause an increase in cost potentially because some people maybe weren't eating breakfast but overall we think this would net out about the same cost of what we're spending now. Peter mentioned we should do the standard CONUS rate. That way we just mark the amounts on the form on the policy. It's really easy. They don't need to research. They can choose how they want to. They don't want to eat a lot for breakfast and eat a lot for dinner, or put more of their money in that way. Or some people want to go grocery shopping, and spend minimal and pocket the $59 to each their own. Or then we're not having them redact for drinking or reducing the tax rate, calculating how much they spent if they remove some of those items from the itemized receipt, because we don't pay for alcohol, stuff like that. Or they're having to
pay for McFlurries though.
Yeah.
Shamrock shakes, yeah. You have to reimburse.
Whether
Snacks.
No, I guess the only reason I asked is because I have been in some places where it's really pretty expensive, where you're stuck at a hotel where there's no grocery store anywhere around unless you're gonna get an Uber and you've just defeated the point. And it can get expensive. And $59, I think in like DC, if you are stuck somewhere where there's nowhere you can go and grab something, is not a lot of money for 3 meals, in my opinion.
Do pay if they have to travel to get a meal, take an Uber, just because there's no restaurants. We do pay for those travel costs to get food. It's not like they have to walk. Some places you cannot walk places to get food, or eating at the hotel is not a good option.
Uber Eats.
Uber Eats. I see your point, but they would have, like I mentioned earlier, they would have a cost if they stayed home and didn't travel to eat. And so really we're probably covering any additional cost in a way, the $59 why they're traveling food, because maybe it's more expensive when you're traveling to eat, so we're covering additional costs. But if you're home, you would have some food expenses if you weren't traveling.
Jen, remind me, are we still allowing, if you don't want the per diem?
No, one or the other, because otherwise, unless there's a business meal. So a business meal, like if there was a lunch and learn here, it's not like someone got reimbursed for the per diem. We reimburse actual for a business meal. Travel meals is per diem.
So when Pete takes President Biden out, we reimburse the full thing then?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes. And we want pictures and stuff.
Yeah. So the only thing that I read in here that I guess I would make a recommendation to a change would be, it talked about for travel, paying for one bag. I think for probably 99% of what we do here, that's probably fine. But I think if someone's flying international, like I think when Mike went over to Japan, one bag is probably not realistic based on, all the suits and everything that he had. So I guess I would say for like international travel, perhaps the reimbursement be for 2 bags, and perhaps domestically, if it's longer than a week, then maybe 2 bags, because trying to stuff all your stuff into one bag for longer than a week is probably kind of problematic also.
Yeah.
Have anyone travel longer than a week?
Maybe there's been maybe a couple of cases of 2 weeks, and they do get a carry-on bag as well. They get a carry-on and a regular bag. But if there is like if they are traveling longer, they would just need to note that there's extenuating circumstances. Like, hey, I need to bring supplies and equipment because I'm presenting and I have some presentation materials, and that is going in a bag. Then we reimburse for the second bag if there's a business case. Like, we don't want to be, you know,
Well,
common
and I'm
sense
just,
would
yeah, I mean, I'm
apply
just
in
making
this. Yeah.
I mean, that, to
No,
me,
we
that
can
is
always
kind of,
note that it's your guys' policy, so we just want to provide feedback of what we see, and we
Yeah.
want to receive feedback of what you guys would like to
seems really
see.
comfortable.
We're very focused on seats, yes.
So it was just a comment that I had, because
Yeah.
I think if, you know, I don't think it comes up that often, but at
Yeah.
least it would be in the policy that would, you know, you would know that that's what it was. And again, I'm trying to save the hassle for you guys and whatever employee it is, you know, having the less interaction and time you have because they're following the policy, then that's the better off everyone is, right?
Yeah, and there's limited international, but, yeah, we'll revisit that, the bag.
Yeah, I think Mike would have a hard
Maybe
time spending only $59 in Japan for 3 meals. That would be pretty
That-
rough.
International rates are different.
Okay,
Yeah.
are they
It's-
okay?
CONUS is just within, it's the continental United States.
Okay.
Yeah, then in that
So-
case, we would take like.
Yeah.
Potential.
There
places.
are international rates
Is there?
for different places, yeah.
Again, I've never done this before, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else from committee members?
I have 3 points. I think the first is that certainly it was good for us to update the policy. I think it's been quite a while, and so it's a good thing that you're working with staff, and the partnership, I think, is providing some reduction of redundancy on one hand, but also clarification on those routine types of situations. So I think that's great. Second thing is that I hear you saying that it is flexible, that we're not absolutely rigid, and that we look at things from a business perspective, and that's important to me, I think. And the third thing is that it's done with the approval of supervisors, and that's the most important thing. They're the ones that are saying, yes, and this looks good, this doesn't look good, you need to restrict yourself here.
Yeah.
That's where those decisions need to be, so I feel very comfortable with it all.
Anything else? Okay, and I would just ask if you could send this out to the full board so that
Yeah.
they get it and they're made aware of it also then. Okay, and then we'll have it on consent next month.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That's good.
Great,
It's on
thank
the
you.
department head agenda also for a week from Friday.
Yeah. and then-
August begins.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we're on to reports.
Thank you.
Carrie.
I'll be back up for you.
Oh, come and have a seat in these comfortable seats up here.
Morning.
Pick whichever style you like.
This gives me a nice.
Thank you.
relax. Just kind of keeps going with something. Sure.
Okay, good morning. So as we
No one
talked
wants to
about,
sit there.
I know.
oh, sorry. As we talked about last month, the sheriff's department billed for the January inmates, and we received the money, and then they're in the process of billing for February. So this is just a summary of who we've had, how many days, the revenue, and then the biggest, I think, area here to talk about is expense. Because, I'm not gonna go too much into the operations because it's not my area, but it's very fluid, and I think it's something that they manage probably hourly. But based on what we know today, with the McHenry inmates versus the Lake County inmates, this is what we came up with for an expense per day.
And so how are you handling, because you said that there were some fixed costs initially that needed to happen.
Correct, so we had to purchase some of the uniforms, mattress pads, et cetera. Those are a one-time
Right.
costs.
But we didn't factor those in because we will use those regardless, whether we have 0 Lake County or
Okay.
150.
So it was a fixed cost that you had initially, but it's not I'll say a disposable cost, it's a investment cost, how about that? Okay. All right, then I would agree, then we shouldn't include that if that's.
Yeah, we were trying to just find what it was costing us additionally to have these inmates.
Got it, okay.
So, well, I don't know, are you guys gonna talk more, or should we ask questions?
Can I
Ask questions.
Okay, so these are the variable costs. Have you had to increase staffing at all?
We cannot increase staffing without coming to you. So right now, we have on our roster, there's 138 positions, but we are only budgeted for 132. So if and when the time comes that we need more staff, we have to come forward and ask for those positions to be funded.
I guess I should have rephrased, sorry. Have you had to increase the hours that staff has had to work due to the increase in inmates?
They are contractual, we cannot increase their hours. Overtime has been pretty steady, and in the past, we've explained how operations work in the jail. It's not one for one, right? So there's fluctuation in the average daily population, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's fluctuation in staff.
Kelly, Carrie was watching that same
Yeah.
thing, and these two met Monday, and kind of, and what was one of the questions, we did see a little elevation in personnel costs in January. Those weren't really due to Lake County inmates, it was more just some year-end payouts and some of those things, but Carrie was asking those questions, and we're gonna keep an eye on it.
Seeing like their usual fluctuation in
Yeah.
personnel expense.
So we don't have to, those are not included in the
They are
variable
not,
costs
no.
at all?
They
Okay.
are not.
Just want to make sure.
They are not. We've had 3 individuals retire. Unfortunately, they were 3 females, and we're already struggling to have, for recruiting females in general, but some of those payouts will make it look like it's
Yeah.
fluctuating.
And I think that speaks too to how it's fluid, and maybe next month it will be different based
For
on.
payroll?
Well, any of these numbers based on how many McHenry inmates we have, or.
So the food fluctuates because we pay per meal. Healthcare will probably not fluctuate because it's either under 200 or over 200, right? However, we're gonna.
400 is the next kicker.
So 401 will be the next, but
We're not-
for
we're not gonna get there.
staffing,
Not gonna get there.
we're gonna manage that. That is not our goal.
These guys are sharing with me every day the inmate count, both the total and the lake, and I'm watching that, and I think this morning was 353, so we're keeping it. Yeah. Our McHenry County inmate numbers have been hovering in the 190 to 202, 203, so you add 150 onto that, because the lake has been steady 150, 151 every day.
Very steady. So we anticipate, the Lake County Sheriff's Office is asking to move money into their contractual line so that they can continue to support this agreement. At some point, if that happens, we will probably be coming forward and asking for an increase in our healthcare line. So when we budget, which starts in May of last year, when we had to budget for our McHenry County
Right.
general population.
Well, on that subject of what's happening in Waukegan, and I did report this yesterday, Administrative Services, my conversation with the Lake County Administrator a few weeks ago said this was the next thing to watch, and she's not forecasting, but the next thing to watch was for a quarterly transfer of monies from Lake County Sheriff's personnel line to Lake County Sheriff's contractual line. When it's in contractuals, then it can come over here. That did happen. A week ago today at the Lake County Finance and Administrative Committee, there was a affirmative vote on a transfer of $1.6 million from personnel to contractuals. That hasn't made it all the way to the Lake County Board yet. They're kind of on our schedule, and their chairwoman needs to sign off on that, and I'm not predicting what will happen there, but I do know it moved through committee. and there was a lengthy discussion. You can watch it, I watched it online. And there was a lot of discussion about their indirect supervision and our indirect supervision versus their direct supervision and the labor costs associated, and they need more people. But
Yeah, so you just said something about coming back about healthcare?
Correct. So when we budget for health, so when we put the budget together, I budgeted for the range under 200.
Got it.
Because the Safety Act was coming, we weren't for sure about Lake County. We have been above the 200, so we've been paying the higher rate, so we're going through those funds, but I don't want to over anticipate, what I'm gonna ask for. So I'm gonna wait until we have a better idea and then come forward and ask for those.
So when you do, then will we be on the resolution then where that revenue's coming from? Are you gonna use this fund as where it's coming from then?
That's a good question. I'll definitely talk to Carrie about, we would love to keep all the money that's coming in for revenue and use it, but I don't know if that's where you would plan on, but we'll have to identify
I mean,
that.
all of this goes into the general fund, so we'd probably, we could use the Lake County revenue. Because it's only.
Right now, it just comes in through
700.
revenue.
No, and
general
I get
fund.
that, but I think to be accurate in accounting, that would be where you'd wanna tie it to it. So yes, I get that it's,
all in a big bucket.
yeah, but it's not in the big bucket because we've asked you to segregate it,
Yes.
so.
Yes, we can, yes, it'll be identified in the revenues versus expenses.
Right,
Yes.
okay. Go ahead, Pam.
So I don't know if you can answer this question. It seems like, well, we know the problem is Lake County can't attract enough people to work in their jail, so that's why we're having them. And I'm just wondering, I guess we don't need to know why they can't, but do you anticipate that how soon that they will be able to have enough employees and this contract will end?
So I know, I haven't seen it, but I know they're negotiating, or they have negotiated a new contract that, what I'm hearing includes a pretty healthy hiring bonus, and the pay is super duper competitive. If they start recruiting now, it takes us about 4 to 5 months to bring someone in. So depending on when they can actually get going with some of those new rates, it would be a while. I do anticipate through the end of the year if their board continues to fund it. Yes, ma'am.
We have concern that we're gonna get poached.
That is not our concern. Our concern is, Cheryl's like, yeah.
They won't leave us, Cheryl.
So our concern, we're hearing from Lake and Keene with some of their numbers, is going into our negotiations, which our contracts for Unit 1 and Unit 2 end this November.
Right about that time.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a 28-minute video discussion online,
Okay.
and it's right on point with these things. So meticulous, and if you're interested, talking about the attractiveness of working in Lake County versus the attractiveness of working in other counties, and
Yeah, I was gonna say they have a different model too, you said.
They have a different model, and we have an awesome jail. Any of the accreditors that come in, they tell us how nice it smells, how nice it looks. We're fully staffed. We don't anticipate that changing. So we've got a top rate jail, probably one that others want to look at and emulate.
Was part of their but you said something about a direct ratio versus a different ratio. Is there a different ratio that's used with them, like of the officers that are there versus the number of inmates?
It's a different model in how the jail is set up.
supervision model, right?
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
I was just wondering if that was.
I don't know, are they looking at changing that?
You need to help me, but the direct supervision model that
Right,
they use
yeah.
versus we're like a little bit more removed.
Yeah, we're removed, so we have you all been in
Supervision
jail?
model.
Yeah.
And it's,
Well,
Our model.
just visiting. Be very clear about that.
as the discussion suggests, their model was a model in the 90s when their jail was constructed, but it suggests that it perhaps puts their officers in a little bit more danger than our model. I think I'm saying that,
Yes.
yeah. So thus making their hiring a little bit more difficult.
We did have that tour. You watched
So
that?
you're
Yeah.
familiar with how our correction officers supervise the areas?
Okay, is there any other questions? Thank you very much for this. I really appreciate you guys doing this. This is
Thank you.
much
Yes.
cleaner, better, transparent, as everyone likes to use. So,
Yes.
anything else on this item?
Not on this item, I have a few other things.
Can I jump in just really quick?
Thank you.
Sorry.
I asked Sandra to mention this.
So the Marine Unit building, I just wanted to let you know, McHenry, so we went out to bid twice and it came in very high. We've had this budgeted around $500,000 for years based on some Wold designs, Wold being the architect that the county used. After going out to bid with McHenry twice and having it come back with an unreasonable number that we think, the city of McHenry got creative. They went to a design to build concept that they used in McHenry before. They used Steve Friend as the construction manager to put that together, and it came back with a number that we can definitely do. So our cost, which include half of the sewer, half of digging the well, is around $426,000. So we're very excited about that. City of McHenry took it to their council on Monday night and it passed. So I anticipate bringing that forward in the next round of committees for approval from this board. The project is the city of McHenry's. So McHenry's contracting with the construction manager. They're building it, but they're invoicing us and we're paying for it. So it's a pretty unique partnership that is a win-win for both of us. But I know it was in the paper, so I
That's
wanted to
why I
let you know
wanted to
it's coming
Right.
before you. It's not just
I've seen the
happening
emails
out.
that are buzzing around about
Yeah.
the project, but now I saw it was in the paper this morning, so I thought we should.
Yeah.
So whose does it become in the end? Ours or Joe
So it's the city of McHenry's building. It's on their property. We're paying for it. There's a depreciation that we're putting in place for that.
Okay.
Today, we have an old decrepit trailer.
Well, we're leasing. We had an old decrepit trailer. That was terrible.
Okay, an older facility.
Yes.
Yeah. This, and outhouses.
And outhouses.
So I assume you're bringing to us an IGA then, is what you're gonna do?
The city isn't interested in doing another IGA. There is an
Okay.
IGA on the books.
Okay.
That we could probably update terms. I mean, it's up to you guys. What they're gonna do is they're gonna invoice us and we're gonna pay. So I'm gonna work with Carrie on how to put that into a resolution. Because
Well,
we
and
have
I'm
an
okay
IGA
with that.
already
I'm
exists.
just trying to codify whatever the agreement is,
Yes.
which probably won't be in that resolution is what I'm assuming, because the resolution is gonna be focused around the monetary aspect of it.
Right.
So I'm just trying to codify, people change, and so I'm just trying to
People
codify.
have changed.
Well, yeah, so I'm just trying to codify whatever that
Sure.
agreement is.
Sure. We can do I'll come up with something with the city of McHenry, either some sort of an addendum or another letter of understanding on that and attach it to the original agreement.
Just something,
Something.
so that it's clear about what the agreement is,
Mhm.
and that, when people move on or change,
Yes.
that's not an issue.
Yes. This is nice. This will be the first time our Marine unit has nice indoor plumbing.
Running water.
Running water.
And good for the public.
And great, it's gonna have public restrooms. City's gonna be paving the parking lot. I don't know if you guys have been out there to Miller Park, but we're gonna be paving it in fall. It's gonna be a nice nice partnership for us.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. What else you got, Karen?
Thank you.
Okay, so, next week Baker Tilly will be on site for the final audit for 23. And I know I'm excited.
I hope you can sleep someday.
But we actually, I feel really good. I feel like we're farther along at this time of the year than we have been in several years. But I wanted to let you know, if you want to stop by and chat with them before or after next Thursday's Committee of the Whole. Leah will be here for sure, the manager, and John is either going to be here Wednesday or Thursday. So I just wanted to let you know. They will be in our finance space.
I mean, the goal is still next Thursday, right?
Yes.
So you're saying,
You know, auditors.
come stop by after the committee.
I mean, you may stop by at any time next week. Well, they're remote on Monday, but Tuesday,
Mary's
Wednesday,
baking
Thursday. But if you want to stop by and.
All you do is you see a bunch of people sitting on their laptops going.
Yes. Next meeting, I will have the fiscal year 25 budget policy. I don't anticipate many changes. We've had a lot over the past couple of years, and I think
Can I
It's
raise
working.
one potential thing to think about? Don't answer it now unless you know the answer, but Daryl was here this morning. We have a project that was going through using RTA dollars. Not significant monies, but we have thresholds for transportation projects and when they come to Finance Committee and when they do it, and they're big. But there is really no threshold for RTA monies. Everything with RTA monies comes to the board. The reason is that the genesis of the RTA sales tax back in 2008, 2009, there was decisions every time. It's the county board's money. It can only be used for public safety or transportation purposes, but there is a decision point there. So we've had everything coming to the county board, no matter the size. Scott Hennings and I talked earlier this week and wondered if that was worth revisiting. You know, we've almost exclusively used RTA money for transportation purposes. We're continuing to do that. Just it'd be one way to lessen the load to this committee, but don't really care either way.
So are you?
Am I saying that correctly?
You are spot on.
So are you recommending similar to purchasing agreement where something is under different threshold, that it has different processes associated with it?
Give me like for our currently our engineering contracts and such, it's like 500,000 to get to here. Is that?
I believe it's 750,000
Yeah.
for engineering contracts and 1.5 million for construction contracts.
So we could set a similar threshold for, you know, RTA monies can flow just through Transportation Committee and just through TC if they were below X, you know, 100,000, 500,000, something like that. Or not.
Well, I don't mind you proposing something, but it would be nice to have, instead of, yeah, something like this, maybe this, I don't know. You know,
Appreciate that.
just something that we can.
I'll ask the Division of Transportation to think of what would they think would make sense. I'm being their voice in this instance. So it never occurred to me. Scott raised it. Scott's got a good head on his shoulders.
I don't want to see it too low, to be honest. I mean, 500,000 for me is perfectly satisfactory. I don't want to have, you know, it gets to the point where it's just like, every time something comes along, and with today's costs, et cetera, and that money, it just can get ridiculous at times.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, you guys already email Transportation Committee about when you choose engineering service, you know, and stuff. So I mean, you're already informing us.
Correct. TC was informed this resolution went through Transportation Committee last week, was not full. The reason it came up is it's about just over $40,000 for this contract using RTA. But because of the past direction that everything RTA comes through F&A, was that still needed? Or should it be the same limits as every other transportation project fund, county option, MFT, so be it, that it just comes through F&A at those same thresholds as all the other engineering funds?
Right. And I can say I'm open to that. I don't have an issue with that.
Absolutely.
And lastly, we have final word from Bronner on the election center, that it can qualify.
Drum roll.
For the, one of the ARPA categories that's not revenue replacement. So I will, outside of the capital, that will still have to come through the general fund.
Yeah, that'll help us with some flexibility.
Yes, so we can do the rent and the CAM through 2026. So I will have that next month for your consideration.
Sounds good.
I have a question. This is maybe related. So currently, Bailey High is going through a process where ARPA money is trying to be clawed back from them because now the state wants money back. I know it's the federal government, ARPA is federal money.
Yes.
Do we think there's anything that can be learned from the fact that Tom now is trying to have to re-justify spending ARPA money? Or it wasn't ARPA, it was Illinois state money.
Yes, for salary reimbursement.
Right. Is there anything to be learned from, like, maybe, because I would assume the federal government might do a similar thing that the state is currently doing?
Yes, that's probably fair. You know, we just went through, with working with FEMA on the COVID, the PPE and supplies, and, you know, we got the check probably a year ago. And we just recently were contacted by someone at the state, you know, wanting to see canceled checks. And it seems a little bit like they're just trying to find some things, and I think that's what Valley High is experiencing.
Right.
So, I mean, with ARPA, I would say, yes, it's always a risk, but that's why we work with Bronner. We try to stay away from the high-risk projects.
Okay.
But, yeah, I'm sure they'll circle back and look for money.
What Teresa's referencing is, these were not advanced McHenry County dollars.
No,
but
they're
they
not
were
ARPA dollars,
COVID
no.
response dollars that came to Valley High with a mandate that 80% of the dollars had to go to personnel. The dollars were distributed to personnel, and now they're coming back and saying, well, some of those people weren't frontline. But of course, the argument is everybody was frontline during COVID at Valley High. You know, and they were. Everybody was doing everything.
Right, so, you know, my thought was, are we making sure that we're really, right, because at the time, if we look at the Valley High thing, from my point of view, you know, we could have still given bonuses to the people that are being questioned now, but put, you know, solidly being like, these people, you can't question the nurses for frontline, right? So they're questioning front-end business office staff.
The 11 people in business office.
Right. And they were doing frontline activities, but that's who the easy mark to question. So when I think about how we're paying our ARPA dollars, I like to think to myself, there are funds we can spend that are like there's no way they can question that this is an ARPA thing. But when we start saying, well, maybe we can kind of justify this, my concern is that perhaps later on we'll see a clawback saying, well, that we re-justify that.
Right.
Right. And so I don't.
And we
you're
don't-
saying you think you only tell it. You really don't.
We don't move forward with projects where we
Yeah.
think maybe this will work.
Okay.
But I guess in fairness to Valley High,
You can't predict people
Right.
from being,
it's always surprising too, the level of detail that the federal government can go into. But
Yeah.
And I think in fairness to Valley High, maybe at the time the money was distributed, there wasn't quite as clear of guidelines.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been.
Okay, before we get off the election center, it was
Yes.
referenced, so this is a good opportunity to bring in, the sheet that was passed out before you is a summary of the county's leased property.
There you go.
For the election center is included on there, and I appreciate that tie-in. This is something that was requested during that conversation of the election center. It was provided to you this morning, it was given to administrative services yesterday, and to the best of our knowledge, this is what we have, and I appreciate Carrie for helping me compile this. So now you know what we have as far as leased properties.
and so are you taking this to the next step, which is analyzing space needs and usage and perhaps coming to us with some longer-term solution.
We had a fantastic conversation on that very topic yesterday at Administrative Services. I would encourage you to
I
listen to.
could justify, I could, yes.
Some of them got to see it. It really was an overview of the 2016 space study, presenting what it was recommended, what was done, what was left to do, and really the long-term discussion direction was when you do your strategic plan next year, was because we're planning on doing that, including a full-blown comprehensive facilities master plan at that time that would encapsulate all of this. So, on this note, I just want to point out there was one lease on here. You see it's a one-year lease. It's for our Wakanda storage. That will be expiring this year with no intent to renew. And so that's $24,000 that will fall off that annual expense.
Sounds good. Okay. Anything else, Carrie?
No.
Any questions for Carrie? No? All right. EDC. We have a meeting next week. At that meeting, there was a small group that created the job description for the executive director position for the EDC. That should hopefully get approved at Tuesday's meeting, and then we can go out. We'll talk about how we're going to put that out as far as the job description and where we're going to advertise it so that we can get that position going. There's also a proposal to the bylaw changes so that it can be called an executive director versus a president, and how that gets reported and how that reports. So there's that on the agenda also. Finances are looking healthy again, or healthier, I should say, which is positive. I had a meeting yesterday with the enterprise zone, is it a chairman or president? Chairman and vice chairman. So Lou and Garrett, and talked through the enterprise zone and how that was going, and we gave them a 8-page document about what the expectations are, because there isn't a contract that's officially in place. So this was kind of serving as a document that would serve as a quasi-contract as far as expectations go, and what job responsibilities are. So we're gonna, again, Brian sits on that, and so does Larry. So we have 2 board members already sitting on that group, and potentially someone from Marengo City Council, we think, is going to fill that other Marengo position that's open right now. But anyway, so it was just opening up the lines of communication with them, so they understand where the MCEDC is currently at, where we're going, and what expectations of both entities were going forward. So it was a good meeting. Am I missing anything on EDC? Okay, so that's it. Any questions on that? Okay. Matt from McHenry County.
Well, we have a wonderful report for you this morning. I would appreciate Elizabeth Kessler sticking around. As you may know, she is the chair of National McHenry County.
Naturally.
So thank you for sticking around. If you have any questions regarding her vision, of course, she would be happy to answer that. But I have several items just to let you know what we're working on. First and foremost, we're working on a revised budget to reflect about $64,000 in additional grant money that was received. We actually have a rather aggressive timeline in which we have to spend it, so we're working through where it's going to go in the budget, how we're going to spend it. Most of it's going to be towards marketing, things of that nature. The executive committee will be meeting on Monday morning. We're going to be talking about policy regarding purchasing approvals and spending thresholds, organizational capacity, and our brand awareness. Then we have committees that are working on bylaw revisions and a marketing approach and strategy. And our next meeting will be April 4th. The National McHenry County will meets every other month now, and then we have meetings in between with committees and executive committees. Just so this committee is aware, the Natural McHenry County contract with the county expires November 30th. So that's something that in the near future we'll be asking you to work on and working on the next evolution of that contract. And the 2024 Insider Guide is out. You should have received a copy in your box. Hopefully you did and had a chance to look through it. It's a fantastic document. It's interesting to see how this has evolved over the past 8 or 10 years, and really love the work that we do. And our company we use for the marketing and branding, they do a fantastic job. If you want additional copies, you can get these on the website, naturallymchenrycounty.com. And I'll end by saying, if you haven't been on the website lately, it is delightful. It is fantastic. It's well done. It reflects just like our visitor's guide. It's fun. It's flashy. It's got great pictures of the community within which you live. So I encourage you to stop by and take a look at it. And plus, it has a good comprehensive listing of many of the events that are happening in and around, some of the things you may not even have known about. So with that, I will end. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I'm intrigued by your biased words, your loaded terminology, as it were, So delightful, fun, and flashy really kind of just pull me right in. So that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to do when I leave here.
It's fantastic. Sell the sizzle, not the steak, right?
All right, anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:16. Carolyn, Kelly seconds. All those in favor say